Hello, it's me, Bradley, back again. So, today we're going to talk about a certain story that was published in the New York Mag spin-off The Cut that, upon closer inspection, might not be all that it seems. So this story got a lot of attention, mostly due to being incredibly badly written and basically arguing that teenagers take abusive behavior too seriously. That's not a joke. I'm going to get into it. So, if you haven't read the story before, here is an extra short list of all the key points. A teenage boy named Diego, not his real name, exists. He has a girlfriend and a decent circle of friends. Diego decides to be a douchebag and shows nude images of his girlfriend to other people at a summer party. When school starts up, news gets out about what Diego did. He doesn't actually get in trouble with the law or the school, despite what he did being kinda illegal. But his friends stop talking to him, and his girlfriend tosses him out like a live grenade, so there's that. Diego spends the next month or so kinda unhappy that nobody wants to be around him anymore. Meanwhile, the school apparently has a lot of issues with abusive behavior, and the administration is apparently doing nothing to recidify it. I'd say this sounds unusually bad the way it's described in the article, but given that my high school was the size of a mobile home and still managed to have a major scandal involving an abusive teacher, I'm not going to really question it. Anyways, a movement starts among the female students to try and fight abuse, and a list of people who should be avoided appears with Diego's name on it. Diego's parents find out. His Karen mom tried to file a Title IX suit against the school. It's not clear at all what his mom wanted the school to do, given that they hadn't actually took action against him at all, and the suit goes nowhere. The movement on the school keeps going, but really can't make any real progress, and this sort of burns out with the school not really trying to help at all, besides a few basic things, but nothing concrete. Diego spends the rest of the school year generally feeling like nobody wants to be around him, but still attends 4 proms, passes his classes, and manages to establish a new circle of friends. A fairly shitty year, but really not the end of the world. So if you're reading this, you're probably thinking, that sounds like normalist teenage drama. The only really unusual thing here is that the person who leaked so much news got outside rather than person in the photos. And you'd be right, but you should also try not to get a job at the Cut. This is where the shittiness of the article comes in. The article's general point is that Diego facing negative social consequences for showing nude images of his girlfriend is a sign of cancel culture overrunning teenagers, and that people who do such things face too much backlash. No, I'm not joking. You can read the article, that's pretty much the point hammered in. So I was thinking about making a video, but I kinda said against it because I didn't really know what to say. It seemed like every point I could have made had already been talked about with someone with a lot more expertise. I kept browsing around to other people had made comments about, and I noticed something. A lot of people made remarks about how certain parts of the story seemed very poorly written, almost in ways that seemed like it was made up. All of these seem to be delivered in a joking-ish tone, where it seemed like they were mocking the article rather than making accusations. But then I started digging, looking over and over the parts that people kept saying were fake, and looking over more of the odd discrepancies in the narrative. So what am I building up to here? Well, after doing a bit of analysis, I feel that's not only possible, but plausible that a significant part of the story was fabricated, if not the whole thing. And in this video, I'm going to explain why. Now, I know what you're thinking. A reputable newspaper publishing a fake story? Sounds kinda weird. So, before I get to the reasons pointing to this story possibly being fabricated, I'm going to lay out why I think it's a possibility. So, the obvious first objection. Wouldn't a fake story get shut down by editorial review? Yes, but that's assuming proper standards. As we've already established, the article is blatantly pushing a political narrative that most people would consider to be abhorrent, but that didn't stop it from getting through. Fake stories have gotten through to mainstream news outlets before, and given the amount of controversy and attention that this piece has generated, I don't think it's unreasonable to suggest that the backlash may have been anticipated. After all, there's the old phrase, no such thing as bad publicity. It definitely generated a lot of negative attention, but also got tons of views from people who otherwise would never have, looked at it. And there's the risk of creating a fake story. One of the big ones is that people involved in a story could be contacted and they could, debunk it. Now, is that a possible threat to the story? Well, no real names were used. No name was ever given for the school, city, or even the state where this happened. It's impossible to try and determine the school from the details of the article. Since there's no place ever specified, nobody will ever reach out and say, hey, this never happened here. The only people and places listed were from instances with no direct relation to this one. They would not be able to tell if the story happened or not. The situation at the school with the movement sounds pretty big. Maybe it's mentioned in local news websites? Well, a disclaimer here. If you actually do this and you try to you find the actual school, you should probably not actually leak specifically where it happened. But basically, I did try that. Try just searching keywords of stuff that happened, like names on girls' bathroom walls, or get abusers off campus, high school, or just sort of phrases that you'd think might bring stuff up. But I couldn't find anything related to that sounded like it was describing something like this incident with just a few Google searches, so I can't confirm it that way either. But summing this up, we have no reason to suspect the editorial review would have actually caught a fake story, no way of actually verifying what happened, and preliminary effects at trying to catch it have failed. Now there's two things that are the story that point to it being fabricated. First, there are some discrepancies, and some of the procedures described in the handling of the incident seem at odds with what's considered practice at schools. Second, there's the bizarre way that people in the story are described as acting, how it seems to align with a very specific sort of crappy storytelling, which, given the blatant agenda pushing, clearly aligns with the idea of the story being fabricated. I'm going to cover the discrepancies first, since it's a little bit shorter and this will sort of set the mood. Now, I don't think that the discrepancies in bloopers are as damning as the general writing style. However, there are some things that make me a bit suspicious. For one, the article claims that Diego's teachers would mark him absent, then sent him to the library to study because he was distracting other students. People who have actually worked at schools had mentioned in the comments in reply to the article that this was bizarre procedure to the point of it just simply indicating that the article might not have been 100% truthful. Another thing is the general timeline of events and the reaction of Diego's parents. About a couple of weeks after news broke about Diego leaking nudes, his parents sent a complaint to the school about other students supposedly spreading rumors about him being an abuser. However, it wasn't until his name ended up on the bathroom wall and the school sent them a message that they actually asked him what was up. And it seems really strange that they wouldn't actually ask him at all if they had already sent stuff to this school and ended up only waiting till his name was getting passed around on lists of abusers. The article doesn't say that he lied or tried to deny it before that point, so did they never actually talked to him with it. Diego is supposedly so ostracized that he goes into independent study and skips his graduation, but he attends prom multiple times without any serious issues. That's somewhat inconsistent. And one thing that really stood out, there's a case where it is early on in the article where it is claimed a student said out loud he would bash Diego's head in with a hammer during class, and even if everyone from the school hates Diego, bullying this case would be suspended faster than you can blink. But the article doesn't mention any punishment for this kid at all. So I wouldn't say that this is like shaky enough to like dismiss it at first, but it does get the feeling that that at the very least there are some things being left out. And now we're going to move into the general writing style, and that I think is a little bit more damning. So this issue is interesting because while I saw a lot of people on social media pointing out small details and specific quotes, not much seemed to really look at the wider picture of how they're fighting the story. In my opinion, when you try and look at the wider picture, it becomes pretty clear that the author was at least being a little bit, let's just say, careful with the details. It's worth returning to the thing that originally got me thinking that this was a fake, and what most people took as a sign of it being fake. There's a specific fake section from the earliest part of the article. Jenny wrote again, "I am friends with Dave and I can't help it. She wasn't involved in this situation," she explained, "and she didn't plan to be. Still, the day after the bus ride, the enforcer turned around in statistics and said as a threat, 'Fuck Diego. I love cancel culture. If you were to cancel anyone, who would you cancel?'" This quote got a lot of attention for obvious reasons. First of all, it's basically identical to a fairly famous line from the movie Fight Club. Second, it just seemed completely unnatural. Can you actually imagine anyone in the real world speaking like this? As a result, most people gravitated towards this as evidence of it being fake. However, I don't think anyone when I saw was looking at the wider context of the article. So let's go forward in the article, go backwards in the article a little bit. According to the story, this boy had just seen Jenny and Diego sitting together, with his flat and certain stare causing Jenny to hyperventilate. This boy was apparently a self-styled enforcer. As we see here, this person had previously said, "In statistics classes announced, there are not many people that I would bash in the head with a hammer. Diego is one of them." Because, why? Why the fuck would you randomly announce that you murder a fellow student with a hammer? So, do you see what I'm getting at here? This person sounds less like a teenager and more like a Wagner Group trainee. The thing is, alone with this could just be an example of a really weird dude, but this is just one example as part of a pattern. So I think it's about time they introduce the type of crappy storytelling I alluded to in the introduction. I've heard a few names passed around on the internet for this, but my personal term is Dubai modernism. Basically, this is a specific style of writing that tends to be really successful in MFA classes and popular with a certain narrow subset of elite literary critics, but tends to get poor remarks from anyone who isn't in that specific circle. If you've ever read the essay A Reader's Manifesto by B.R. Myers, that'll give you a good introduction. Basically, here's what I consider the defining traits of DM. Unusual, but not particularly clever, descriptive language, often making use of metaphors or analogies that sound complex but don't actually describe the situation all that great. Lots of social commentary that sort of touches on issues, but rarely ever says anything unique. A common feature is lots of vague musing on consumerism that sounds interesting to the author, the reviewers the book is aimed at, and pretty much no one else. Whenever the book expresses a political agenda, expect for it to cling strictly to a liberal centrist viewpoint. Anyone advocating for major socio-political change gets portrayed dubiously at best. Basically, you have the political range of the New York Times editorial columns. The story is meant to be realistic, but characters often act overly exaggerated in ways that seem to intentionally rub against the fourth wall. Note, this is a pretty dumb thing to put into what you want to be a serious article, but that does seem to have stopped the author, as we've discussed with Captain Hammer earlier. Characters who are not like the author, or the target serial journalist, tend to be characterized rather poorly. This is generally seen with groups of people, included but not limited to, and mostly depending on who the writer is, women, people from a lower socioeconomic class, political activists, teenagers, and more of the like. The key thing to keep in mind here is that there's almost an irritating sense of condescension in the writing for these people. Just almost sometimes it feels like the article just doesn't really believe these people should have their ideas or beliefs examined. It's hard to explain, and I'll probably need to make a whole other video just to talk about it, but you'll know it when you see it. And finally, there's often very trite and unsubtle lessons that are present, often outright stated by the characters. In summary, Dubai modernism is like Dubai. Its city exists mostly for rich people with shit taste, and has awful social and political implications. So why is this important? Well, when you start actively looking at the article, it becomes clear that this sort of creative writing style just permeates the piece. You can see the weirdly flowery descriptive language a lot. A few examples here that I'll just show up on the page. The vague social commentary is there too. The story purports to be an expose on how cancel culture is wreaking havoc on teenagers, but in the style of things, the main lesson of the piece seems to be sexual abuse in schools is bad, but students rallying against sexual abuse is bad, with the harm caused by the latter getting way more screen time. It is the classic example of purporting to be making bold statements when, in reality, very much nothing it brings to the table is actually saying anything of substance. To say that a lot of the people seem to be exaggerated or just acting weird is an understatement. Hammer Boy might be one of the worst offenders, but pretty much every person here seems to act less like a human teenager and more like a character from a really pretentious anime. Whenever the characters talk about what's happened, their quotes almost seem like they were scripted to fit the author's narrative as best as possible. And if you haven't got it out by now, the author has seemingly limited empathy for the students who were actually harmed and are protesting at the school. We have some pithy remarks about how hard it is to be a woman nowadays, but that's up there from basically brushing off the fact that one of the main organizers was a rape survivor with a single sentence, but somehow managed to slip in the word privilege. Classy. So, for the conclusion. So, with what we've discussed so far, what can we say? Now, I don't think that what I've observed is sufficient alone to claim the entire story was fabricated. However, it does seem quite likely that the author's account of what happened is at least leaving out a significant amount of context, and quite likely made up a few quotes. It's important to point out that even if the story was completely real, it shouldn't have been published. Fake or not, the writing is just shit, and what it's advocating for is not something that should be making its way into a major newspaper. I'm going to note that this was a relatively recent story, and we may learn more in the future. In fact, given the process for putting together this video, it's entirely possible that there will be more information out by the time it's published. So I'm trying to record all the audio before I got home with my family, where I'll be stitching together the video there, as I can't really record in the house. If you see more information, please contact me with it so I can make an update. Anyways, it's been a pleasure. I tend to keep covering this subject and look forward to more content in the future. Might be commentary, might be humor, might be gaming, who knows? Please like if you enjoyed this video, subscribe if you want to see more from me, and if you have any advice or thoughts of your own, please leave a comment. This is Riley Hughes signing off. See y'all later!